When the G80 debuted in 2021, we loved just how close it was to its German rivals. It came with only a gas engine though, there was no electric or electrified version, but that's changed for 2023 with the G80 Electrified, which has replaced all of the gasoline engine components with a pure electric powertrain good for up to 282 miles of EPA rated range. So we spent some time with the G80, we've charged it, we drove it, we lived with it. So here are 5 things we like and 4 things we don't. The first thing we like is just where the G80 Electrified is positioned in the market. There's a lot of news, there's a lot of buzz with EVs, but really when you look at how many there are compared with gasoline vehicles, there just aren't that many. And so the G80 Electrified is coming in at a really interesting segment and price. At a little over $80,000, there's just not a lot in this price range that's this size and this luxury oriented. You now have the Mercedes EQE, which will be a direct competitor to the G80, but you also have more expensive vehicles like the EQS or a Model S or a Lucid. Those are easily over $100,000 vehicles. And then you have the smaller vehicles in the $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 range. So there's just not a lot in the $80,000 range. And what this is doing for $80,000 is really impressive because you're getting just a traditional luxury experience. You know, I spent some time in the EQE and it's showing off its luxuriousness as far as technology, big screens. This though has that more traditional luxury feel with fine materials, nice stitching, there's lots of padding and lots of quality just everywhere in the interior. And those are reasons we like the regular G80 too. It's almost identical with the exception of it's electrified. And it's a really interesting, really unique vehicle in the class. Numbers 2 and 3 on the list of things we like are related to how the G80 Electrified drives. It is the most sporty driving G80 as well as the most luxurious driving G80. And that's thanks to the electrified powertrain. You get those inherent advantages, including there's no grumbling engine under the hood, and that's a starker difference because we have driven the G80 Sport and it's a perfectly fine vehicle on its own, but then when you go to the electrified powertrain, you're just really impressed by how quiet it is and then also how responsive it is. There's that immediate accelerator response once you're moving, and you just get a heightened sense of responsiveness while at the same time getting a quieter, more refined ride. Now, there's 10 fewer horsepower than the G80 Sport. The G80 Electrified has 365 horsepower, but there's a lot more torque at 516 pounds-feet of torque. But that's kind of offset by an additional 585 pounds of weight in the electrified version. And overall acceleration is not that different, but in between wide open throttle and just cruising around, there's a gigantic difference. You're also not getting a very performance-oriented overall 0 to 60 mile per hour time because this is not a Model S or a dual motor EQS where you're getting a very high performance vehicle. This is a more sedate experience, but also considerably less expensive than those cars. The fourth thing we like is how there is a clear advantage in fast charging. And we were able to fast charge the G80 Electrified in the summer and in the winter. Had 2 very different experiences, but when it's good, it's really good. Genesis claims that the electrified G80 can go from 10% charge to 80% in just 22 minutes when plugged into a compatible charger. And that's gonna be a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger. And that's really impressive for any EV, regardless of price. In our testing in warmer months, the G80 delivered on that factory claim. We went from 16 to 80% in 20 minutes. And even its home charging is impressive because you can charge at 10.9 kilowatts, and that will get you from 0 to 100% charge in 7 hours and 22 minutes. In winter charging, we observed a slower charge rate, which is expected. We went from 18 to 80% in 38 minutes. The last thing we like is in this case, and it's not a pair of Genesis branded fluffy slippers, but it's the adapter for the vehicle to load device. Now this is a really innovative way that Genesis is using the large EV spec battery, and it is letting you plug this into the charge port to use the big battery as a power transfer device. So basically you take that energy from the battery, you plug in a household style appliance, and you can power that device. And what's really cool is this is powerful. Most outlets that you see in a minivan or a truck are very limited. This can go up to 15 amps, can power a variety of appliances. You're probably not going to see the G80 at a tailgating event like a football game or a NASCAR race, so this will really be useful for power backup. When the power goes out, plug in your stuff until the power comes back in. Now on to the things we don't like, and that's how it drives in stop and go city traffic. You know, when you're driving and in motion, it's really responsive, everything works as expected, but when you're coming to a stop, there's this strange hesitation when using the one pedal driving mode. You let off the accelerator and you would expect it to immediately start slowing down, but it doesn't. There's this delay. And the one pedal driving mode is a lot about smoothness and being able to drive more smoothly just by using that one pedal to accelerate and stop. So that's a little strange. And then also you come to a stop and the car brakes almost too soon and you get this rocking back and forth when the car comes to a stop, which is just slightly disorienting. Another thing we wish the G80 Electrified would do better is trip planning. And this isn't a giant knock against the G80 because really there are only a couple automakers like Tesla who are doing trip planning really well. But if you put in a destination that is farther than what the vehicle can travel on range, it's not going to plot out stopping points and it's not going to tell you estimated arrival time based on how long you need to charge, which is something Tesla does. This will give you nearby charging stations, and it will also show you a map of how far you can go on your current charge, but there's no active trip planning, and that's just kind of a bummer with any EV that can do road trips as good as the G80 can, because if you can find those 350 kilowatt charging stations, road tripping is actually really easy in a vehicle with this kind of capability, but you don't really have all of the tools to do that within the navigation system. You're gonna have to do that planning yourself. The third thing we don't like is how there's less passenger space and cargo space than the regular G80. There's about an inch less headroom up front and about an inch and a half less headroom in the back. And this is not a small car, this is a mid-sized vehicle. It's pretty long, but I had my 5-year-old in the car in her car seat, and the car seat takes up a lot of room and a lot of headroom, and she kept calling it a small car, which I was curious about, but then I also hit her head on the roof every time I got her in, and now I can see why she thought it was a small car. That may not be the use case for a lot of G80 electrified owners, but it is an example of just how much less headroom you do have. Also, versus the gas G80, there's less cargo room. We measured space from 16.1 cubic feet to 12.9 cubic feet, and that's because all of the electric parts underneath the vehicle create this intrusion into the trunk, and there's just a little less space. The last thing we don't like about the G80 Electrified actually has nothing to do with the car itself, but its availability. Right now, it's only being sold in 15 states, and that's a shame. It's a shame because we like all of the other qualities enough that we named it our top EV pick for luxury for 2023. Be sure to subscribe to Cars.com's YouTube channel and turn on notifications for more electric car reviews.